Kitco Mining's special coverage of the Bank of Montreal's 32nd Global Metals, Mining and Critical Minerals Conference is brought to you by First Majestic Silver.
Hello, this is Paul Harris for Kitco at the 32nd BMO Metals, Mining and Critical Metals Conference in Florida. Today we're talking about silver exploration and development in Mexico, and I have great pleasure to be joined by Tony Makuch, President and CEO of Discovery Silver. Good morning, Tony.
Morning, Paul. Nice to get the chance to talk to you in person.
I know we've had many calls, and I think this is our first face-to-face. Thank you very much for being here. Now, you formally became CEO of the company in January. Congratulations. And after your success at your predecessor company, Kirkland Lake Gold, I think many people were perhaps surprised to see you sort of come back, get back into the saddle so soon, and particularly with a silver developer. What did you see about Discovery Silver that was so special? What would you see was special about the opportunity?
Well, I think what you have is a project that it's a very large resource, almost 1.1 billion ounces, a silver equivalent in the resource, about say 550 million ounces silver and zinc and lead, and make up that total equivalent number. You also had a project and looked at it a lot, did a lot of review on the geologically, really hung together very well, very good deposit, open at depth, lots of potential for extensions, etc. And then in 2022 there had been a PEA done, and then we started working on the company started working at PFS. I took on a role on an interim basis, and during that period of time, I made a lot of improvements and simplifications in the pre-feasibility study to the plan. But we increased productivity 25%, which then in the PEA there was a 16-year mine life. So you sit there and say you had 11-year mine life, but we actually end up growing the resource and ultimately the mine life to 18 years. So the project sits now one of the largest silver reserves globally, at over 265 million ounces of silver, and in the production point of view, over the life of mine now, over 18 years, presented in the pre-feasibility study, over 33 million ounces of silver equivalent produced, and between the years 5 and 12, over 40 million ounces of silver years produced. So what you have is, as I mentioned, in terms of the largest undeveloped silver deposit globally. And when getting into production, it'll be one of the top three silver mines globally, to almost even be the largest silver mine. And if you separate actually the zinc, it's actually be the top 10 zinc producer. So a very large deposit, open. And in terms of the mine plan doesn't actually only addresses and mines out about under 50% of the resource. So there's a lot of optionality in the future. As a matter of fact, if you go, the difference between the metal prices from the resource pit to the reserve pit is $2 an ounce for silver and 10 cents a pound for zinc. So with higher metal prices, slightly higher metal prices in the future, and lower operating costs, there's lots of opportunity to double the reserve here at Cordero. And it's a discovery that was done in 2008. Rightfully so, junior company's been exploring, and you're just trying to identify this deposit, as I mentioned, open at depth. Definitely in a very prospective region in Mexico for looking for more deposits, and a lot of prospectivity for further expansions in terms of what's at Cordero. So, it's a project that will transform the silver space once we get it built. Right?
Thank you, Tony. I think it's worth highlighting or repeating it. Cordero is not your typical silver deposit, is it? I mean, it really is an outlier, an anomalous one. And just to put some sort of context around that, your annual production, which you said will be 33 million ounces a year silver equivalent, that's bigger than the combined output of Juanicipio and Las Chispas, two big silver projects which have recently come into production. So an amazing project that you're putting together there. Now, why do you think Cordero will be important for the silver space, or its production? Why do you think that will be important for the silver space?
Well, I mean, first, it's going to be a large scale single deposit. That and the costs are in the lower half of production right now. We show in the pre-feasibility study. It's very some of the other things about the project you mentioned, very capital efficient, because there's a high grade. It daylights the surface, and there's a high grade nature to the deposit, and the strip ratio is actually fairly low, especially in the first few years. So, and for life of mine, it's only 2-to-1 strip ratio. So you the payback period is very quick. So what it does is it creates some people talk to me about the silver space, and you have a lot of silver mines that are producing, but you question whether they all make much money at all. But here's one silver mine that's going to actually generate positive returns and create a lot of value for shareholders, but also create a lot of prosperity in the region, right, for people.
Okay, as a large project, it's very much in your wheelhouse as a developer. You've built large-scale mines, so this is a large-scale project. It seems that you've got the right skill set to bring to this development. As you say, you've already helped shape some of the improvements and optimizations in the PFS. Going forward towards feasibility, how do you think you'll continue to shape the development of Cordero towards becoming a successful mine?
First off, we have a couple of critical things to do as going down forward from here to complete the feasibility study. One is, securing surface rights and keeping on building on the social license that advances to get the permits. Definitely water. Water is one of the critical things. I mean, if you, depending on how much water you have access to, you can do a lot of, you can mine at a much higher rate than what we have. But the other aspect on this project is if you're getting it moved forward, we see there's significant improvements still in terms of maybe 10 to 15% increase in productivity in the current form. There's potential for some further process improvements. There's some potential for some further mining improvements and mining rate improvements, and even equipment selection that hasn't been optimized, that you see that there's a lot of value that can go further added from the pre-feas to the feasibility study. And we had set the project up where we have a phase 1 and a phase 2. The phase 1 was getting to 25,000 tons a day, and start mining the phase 1 pit, and then use cash flow from operations to fund phase 2, which is the real build to get to 50,000 tons a day. If we see that we can get phase 1 to maybe for the same price, and by the way, it's $450 million US is where the capital cost. So if we think we can get it to another 15% improvement in productivity in phase 1 and push out phase 2 by a year or two, we actually, the payback period is over 2.2 years. So then it's, from a capital efficiency point of view, it's a very financeable project. And if you compare it in the gold space, I mean, what you're building here at Cordero is equivalent to a 400,000 to 500,000 ounce a year gold mine for an all-in sustaining cost of about $1,150 an ounce in the current form, what we see in the PFS in terms of costs, for $450 million US. It's pretty hard to find those projects globally.
Thank you, Tony. So what are some of the next steps on the timeline? When do you anticipate having the feasibility finished and permitting and then potential construction?
Well, so we intend to submit our EIA over the next month or two, start the permitting process. Meantime, we're continuing work on the feasibility study, progressing the feasibility study. As I mentioned, part of the key parts are now progressing the feasibility study, besides more detailed engineering, besides some of the process improvements I talked about, whether it increased throughput and improved in mining rate, is also securing water, drilling for water, ensuring how much water we have, and understand what we got from a water point of view. We think it's actually a fairly water efficient project because of the very coarse grind nature of the project at almost 210 micron. And so access to water, it will be something important over the next while. And then, as we complete our feasibility study, we may unlock set the company up and for financeability of this project, and then we can go and start looking for on the exploration side for new potential discoveries and new extensions on the deposit.
Okay, thank you, Tony. I want to take a little sidestep now and talk about mergers and acquisitions. You've obviously been very involved. You've been involved in some very successful transactions in recent history. There's, I think, 8 active gold deals on the table right now. What are your thoughts on how the gold sector is evolving, and why do you think there's suddenly been a number of transactions announced?
Well, I think, definitely relevance, and I mean, people want to, at times growing to, we are first off, it's a depleting resource, right? So, I mean, there's 2 ways you can expand or grow your business, and sometimes growing the business, extending mine life. One is through diamond drilling and exploration, and then invest it in development. The other part is in terms of trying to buy production. And so, if you buy production, and if you see synergies in buying production, that helps you in terms of reducing costs and making more value for shareholders, then yeah, you can see value in M&A. But if I think doing M&A just for the sake of being bigger doesn't necessarily make better companies. It just makes bigger companies, right? And if there's a way when you can do M&A that makes a company go from good to great, then that's what you want to do. But if it just goes from good to big, well, you have to question it. I'm sure investors are always looking at that.
Okay. Now, obviously, we've just been talking about M&A in the gold space, but in terms of silver companies, when M&A in the silver space has often been silver companies buying gold assets to diversify into the other precious metal. Do you think we'll see sort of silver M&A in the silver space?
That's a good point. You've seen a lot of silver companies try to get into the gold space. So sometimes get into gold space by accident because how do you grow in the silver business? There's not a lot of deposits. Cordero is one of these big deposits that's very, very, very rare. So part of it is looking at ways to grow, and definitely gives you some diversification of metals, and I mean there's a lot of benefit to diversification of metals and metal production. But if I look at the silver space, and maybe there is opportunity for growth in the silver space, and I think there's a lot of similarities, potential. Again, if there's synergies, if synergies with production in regions, synergies where you're producing the same metals and you get better terms in terms of how you get treatment costs, how you move it forward is going to be important. But I think the thing that's really driving what we always have to think about in our industry, you always have to create companies that in the end we work for shareholders, the companies that belong to shareholders, and sometimes the smallest things happening in the market can have a significant impact on your share price and have an impact on your shareholders. So if you can do things to protect your shareholders in that sense by diversifying the company a bit, or and some of that could be in technical risk and operational risk, but some of it also is just being able to be a larger player in the ESG side, to be able to really influence growing and becoming a carbon neutral or carbon free economy. I think it's something that you always have to keep in your mind, and how do you move that forward, right?
Thank you, Tony. I think one interesting aspect about silver equities is they typically have a higher beta than gold equities. So when the prices move, the exponential or the corresponding move in the share price is far and above what gold companies experience. And I've spoken to a number of investors who say they've made much more money out of silver stocks than gold stocks over the years. So from that point of view, you're certainly in the right metal.
Yeah, but that's a good point. But I think as we're building companies, the same as what I try to think about whether you're in the gold space or what space you are, if we have to rely on the metal prices to go up or our share prices to go up, then we're not doing our job. But we've got to build businesses that produce the metal at a low price so that there's margin. So if the prices go up, you're making more money, right? So if we don't want to get into where we need metal prices to go up to drive our share price. So we got to keep our costs in order and try to create these unique projects. And that's again where Cordero is one of these projects that's going to produce on average 33 million ounces of silver equivalent a year. The right metal mix: silver, lead, and zinc for the new economy as we're moving forward, and at the right cost scale, so that we can it's up under $13 an ounce, so that you can weather the storm in all the cycles of production.
Well, I think you make a very valid point there, Tony. And I wish you the best of luck with the Cordero feasibility. I look forward to hearing about that as and when that's released. Tony Makuch, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thanks, Paul. Yeah.
And I'm Paul Harris. Stay tuned to Kitco for more from BMO.
Kitco Mining's special coverage of the Bank of Montreal's 32nd Global Metals, Mining and Critical Minerals Conference is brought to you by First Majestic Silver.